All right, so this Knife Thoughts video is going to be a review of this knife, and this is the Who Knives V2. So this knife was sent to me by Who Knives, and Who Knives has kind of been on my radar for a long time since their V1, their first design, and honestly in large part because of the name. So the name Who Knives is because it is a British knife company, and it is inspired by the Sutton Hoo burial site. So the Sutton Hoo burial site is a burial site from the Anglo-Saxon culture from around the 6th to 7th century that really, illuminated the history of that time and place, and in particular the Kingdom of East Anglia, which there wasn't a lot of record of until this site, which was actually a buried ship, was found. And it's something that I have always been really interested in as someone who enjoys history, particularly medieval history. This is like early medieval. And so when I saw that a knife company had been started with, the name Who Knives and the one of the helmets from that burial site as their logo, I was very interested. But at the time, I just wasn't super into modern slip joints. If you watch my channel, I love traditional slip joints. But at the time, I didn't have, or really, wasn't super interested in modern slip joints. But since then, I have become very interested in modern slip joints. Things like the Kershaw Federalist that I have a video on, and the Jack Wolf knives, which I have lots of videos on. So they asked if I'd be interested in checking out this V2, and I said, yeah, I definitely would be. So what is this knife? Well, it is a modern knife. It is more modern than a lot of my modern slip joints are, but it is also a slip joint. And so, why would you want your modern knife with very modern styling to be non-locking? And the reason is that this knife is really primarily marketed for the UK and Germany market. And the reason for that is because in those places, you are supposed to carry, it's only legal to carry knives that are non-locking and blades under 3 inches. Now, I am not an expert on the knife laws in those countries, but I know that they are more restrictive than a lot of places in the US, certainly than where I live. So this knife and Who Knives in general are primarily marketed for and made for those communities where you have to have non-locking and blades under 3 inches, which this has. It has about a 2.75 inch blade. But there are places in the US where there are similar restrictions. So a lot of places have a 3-inch blade law, and then some places also require your knives to be non-locking. So I think that there are definitely places where this would fit in for legal reasons in the US. So it allows, people who live in those places where you have to be careful about what you carry, to carry a knife that has the styling, the look, and most of the features of a one-hand opening modern titanium handled knife. Now, it's a double detent slip joint, so that means that you can open and close this knife one-handed very easily. And so that's different than a traditional slip joint. So a traditional slip joint typically will have a back spring, and that back spring puts pressure on the tang of the knife the whole way through opening and closing the knife. So you can, sometimes close a knife one-handed. Some people don't recommend it because it can cause the blade to hit the back spring. But usually you have to two-hand open a traditional slip joint. But with the double detent, you can both open and close the knife one-handed. And that's because instead of having a back spring going against the tang of the knife, it has two kind of leaf springs on either side there. And each of those has a detent ball. You can kind of see the detent ball there through the crack. And that detent ball sits into a hole, or each detent ball sits into a hole on each side of the blade tang, both in this open position. Some knives that are double detent knives have a half stop, but this one doesn't, which is a good call on this knife because it allows for that quick one-hand opening and closing. And then also in this closed position. So it does hold the knife both closed and open, but it doesn't pull the knife closed, as you can see, or at least it doesn't as much as a traditional back spring slip joint. So It's an interesting mechanism. It's one that I have had a few knives that use this mechanism before, and I think that it's really well done on this Who Knives V2. You can see that you can definitely, thumb flick this knife open one-handed very easily. You can also push on the back of the blade on the spine with your index finger and close it really easily also. So very kind of nice action. It is kind of fidgety. I do like the way that double detent slip joints feel because you kind of open and close them really simply like this. Push, 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 real simple. So it does have that kind of fidget factor that something like a frame lock flipper would have. Now, it's not going to hold open as securely, certainly, as a locking knife, again, like a frame lock that is actually locked, or even really quite as securely as a backspring knife, because the backspring, if you push it, it'll snap back open, whereas a double detent, you can push on it a little, but once you break that detent, it's not coming back to full open. So that's just something to be aware of. But, as long as you're using the knife reasonably, cutting, edge forward, putting pressure on the spine and all of that, you shouldn't have too much trouble. Now, I find the double detent to be completely fine in use. I mean, certainly you're not going to use this knife as a tactical or self-defense knife. It's not a good choice for that, I would say. And it's not really like a heavy, I don't know, hard use abuse type knife where if you're like scraping and prying and stuff like that, but really, how many people are really doing that stuff with their knives? Certainly how many people are doing that stuff with their knives if they're buying a premium knife like this. But I think that it works well as an EDC knife. If you get this knife because you want to have a nice knife with nice materials and a knife that you can open and close easily but not worry about the legality, use it to cut your boxes open, cut some cardboard, all that kind of stuff, I think that the double detent works completely fine. Now, speaking of opening and closing, this knife has a thumb stud, as you can see, but you can probably tell in there that it is adjustable, so you can change the location of the thumb stud. Now, I haven't found any need to do that. I think that it's, easy to get my thumb onto that thumb stud. I could see maybe putting it in that higher area there, but it is adjustable. You can both remove the thumb stud and move it, and they do include an extra thumb stud. So this thumb stud that is, actually on the knife when you get it is a little kind of thicker and heavier than the thumb stud. This extra thumb stud in here. Haven't opened this because, again, I haven't needed to, but it is nice that you can remove it if maybe you don't want it to be one-hand openable. If that is, a law that you have to deal with, you could certainly pinch and open it here. Or you could move it if you wanted to. But again, I haven't found a need to. I think that it works really well as is. The other thing is that this knife does have a nice deep carry pocket clip. So you can see that that's really deep carry. And in places where, you do have to worry about the legality of knives, I think that this pocket clip is pretty good at kind of hiding the fact that it is a knife pocket clip. So to me, this pocket clip looks more like a pen pocket clip than it does a knife. So for example, here is a pretty, innocuous, what's that word? Anyway, innocuous, there we go, knife clip. But you can still see that it looks more to me like a knife clip than this does, whereas the Who Knives clip looks more like a pen clip. And that's certainly true for, more normal clips also. Like, that doesn't look like a pen clip, right, on the Civivi Elementum. That, you could see, if someone saw it and wasn't familiar with Who Knives, they would think that that was a pen in your pocket. So I think that that is a nice feature, having that clip be so slender and so deep carry, because it makes it so that you can kind of pass it off as a pen. And it is reversible and removable, so it's kind of an interesting setup. You do have to remove the scales to change it, but you can see in there that you can take that clip off and move it to the other side. Now, speaking of all of this, all of the construction and everything, you might be wondering who makes these knives. These are not made in the UK. You know, I think that we can all pretty much understand that a knife with titanium handles and, which I didn't mention yet, M390 steel. Where does it say that? It says somewhere here on here, M390. Anyway, it is M390. But a knife with titanium handles and M390 steel, it would be extremely expensive if made in the UK, and it's really not something that I'm aware of anyone making in the UK. I don't know that there are really any production companies making knives like this in the UK. It's just not a very friendly market for that sort of thing. So these are made by an OEM that they told me that the designer who sent this, and I'll show you that real quick here. These are designed by Carl D. Pearson. He said that this OEM is not traditionally, you know, in the EDC or knife world. They're just someone that they found and, you know, are using. And it's called Microgear, or MCG. So again, not something that I have heard of before, but I think that they're doing a good job. It is nicely machined in general. There's rounding on the corners of the handles. You know, no, I don't see any like major machining issues or marring type things like that. Now the blade is ground pretty well. It has an interesting grind to it. You can see it's kind of a compound grind. There is a line right here. So it's kind of almost like a traditional Tonto design actually, which is an interesting, I guess, blade shape to go with on this knife. But I think that it is ground pretty well. It's not the thinnest knife out there. So if you can see here, the kind of taper towards the tip, and then here at the heel. Not the thinnest ground knife out there. It is, you know, a saber grind. It's not a full flat grind. Or a full height grind, but I think that it is ground pretty well. The finish is nice. It cuts reasonably well. Again, not the sliciest knife out there in the world, but it's going to work for your normal EDC tasks. The handles are also relatively thick. So you can see that that is a pretty hefty piece of titanium. And I think that the reason for that is probably in part that they do have to fit those detent springs in there. So it is kind of a hefty feeling knife for its size in your hand. And I think that that's almost a feature in that, you know, if you're only able to have knives that are under 3-inch blades and are non-locking, but you want to have a, you know, more modern, solid, hefty feeling knife, this gives some of that by being, you know, a little thicker in the handle, a little bit thicker in the blade grind. So, you know, it gives it a solid feel. Now, as for the handle, it feels pretty good in my hand. That was one thing I was concerned about when getting this knife, is that, you know, I wasn't sure if it would feel good in my hand, but my index finger fits in this area here really well. Then my two fingers, my middle and ring finger, fit here, and my pinky sits on top of this area. So I think overall it's a really nice knife. I mean, you know, if this is a type of knife that you're looking for, I think you do have to kind of be looking for this type of knife, you know, a non-locking knife that's not too big. But it is, you know, if that's what you're looking for, I think a great example of that. And it is also, you know, a good size generally for EDC. So I'm going to give you a couple comparisons here. Hopefully I don't drop knives too much. There is the Civivi Elementum. And then here is an Axial Enzi. So, you know, a very EDC friendly size knife. And speaking of that, I wanted to talk about the price of this knife a little bit. So right now it's on sale for 125, basically, Great British pounds, which comes out to like, I think 170, something like that, 150, 170 in American dollars. So it is, you know, not a super budget friendly knife, but for having M390 steel and a full titanium handle, I think it's in line with other knives, particularly with other knives that are made overseas but have, you know, either American or UK design and, you know, good features, good design, unique design. So an example of that here is the Axial Enzi. It's about the same price, about $170. It is designed in the USA, but made overseas. I don't know that they say who their OEM is, but a similarly sized knife, similar materials, titanium handles, and 20 CV steel, and about the same price. Another example, this is a bigger knife with probably more machining, but the QSP Penguin, this is the larger Penguin Plus, it's a little more expensive, so it's $195. This is an exclusive from traditional pocket knives. But I think that the price is pretty good. It's pretty in line with what you're getting with, the market and everything like that. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is all the stuff that comes with this knife, because it does come with a good bit of stuff. So it comes with a nice microfiber cloth pouch. It comes with a microfiber cloth for cleaning your knife. It comes with the sticker that I already showed. It comes with the thumb studs that I already showed. It comes with just a little kind of business card. It comes with a lifetime warranty guarantee card, and then the specifications card that I already showed. But it also comes with this really nice hard case. And that brings me to one thing I also wanted to mention, which is that these are numbered. So these are all numbered, and this one is 155. There are a few numbers left, so you can check out what numbers they have and see if they have a particular number that you want if you decide to pick one of these up. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that they are coming out with the V3. And the V3 has a little bit of a different design. It has more of a spear point than this kind of Tonto or drop point. And it has a little bit of a simpler handle, more of a straight handle. And it does have a flipper. So honestly, I think that the V3 might be even better than the V2. It will be a little bit more expensive, but I think that the V3 is really interesting. It's up for pre-order right now. You get like a $10 discount if you pre-order it versus buying it once it's actually available. So the V3 design looks really interesting to me. Nice, simple spear point blade, nice, simple handle shape, same, double detent, but with a flipper also, which I think double detent flippers are really nice. They're like I said, even more fidgety than a double detent thumb stud. So I think that these Who knives are really cool. And here is actually, that's the V3 on the business card there. So you can see how nice and simple that design is. I think that that's going to be a real winner. So I suggest checking it out if you're looking for this type of knife. And I really appreciate Who Knives and, again, Carl Peterson there sending this knife along. So if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and select all so you know when I post new videos. Check out my other social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Knife Thoughts, and my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.